Philip's number.
It's safe to say that Philip is a very divided character among the fandom. I really enjoyed the episode, and the fantasy sequence was really trippy. Coming back to the episode, even though I'm annoyed by the usage of the be yourself message, it works out for this episode, only they added a new angle about carving your own path. At first, Philip wanted to know why he was given the number 68. After saving 68 sheep from Gordon hitting them, he decided that's what he should be remembered for. It was great. What makes it even funnier more so is Gordon's character. At first he makes fun of Philip's number, but after saving him from running into the sheep, he genuinely apologizes for teasing him earlier, showing that despite his arrogance, he does have a sympathetic side. There may be a few issues here and there, but in the end, I don't think they're worth moaning about. However, I'm still interested in what's the reason for Philip being number 68, and why the hell did they ignore it?
The fastest red engine on Sodor.
This is a big one. The episode that fully showcases Rosie in her brand new livery. How does it fare? And does it do Rosie any justice? Well, even though she appears prominently, this is mostly a James episode, but a great one at that. They say Rosie was given a repaint, but they don't say why. Did she need a change? Was it because she didn't want to be made fun of her old livery? Which would be understandable perhaps. Anything would do instead of simply cutting one of 8 missing episodes. Despite this issue, the episode as I mentioned earlier is great. James' stubbornness really shone here, and he's got solid reasoning to why he didn't want to worry about his brakes until it was too late and had his crash at Tidmouth. Though I should point out that steam engines don't use brake fluid. There's a reason you got a railway consultant. The theme once again is good here. It's incredibly stupid to let problems fester to the point they're out of your control. On the whole, I love this episode and the crash is amazing. A pity that Rosie didn't have much to do here, but it's interesting how this leads up nicely to the next episode.
A shed for Edward.
And here we go with possibly the most controversial Thomas episode in recent years. No, not fandom controversy like the way she does it or Rocky Rescue. I mean like legitimate controversy. I'll get to that in a bit. To start with, this is the very first episode of the entire show where Mark Morgan doesn't narrate except for the episode's title. But really, what is the point of the narrator these days if we can see what's happening before us? This is why CGI storytelling is better than the model ones. Much as I liked latter in the classic era, it had limitations. After all, less is more. I really liked Edward and Philip's dynamic in this episode. Sure, it's a bit like Edward and Thomas's in The Adventure Begins, but that was when Thomas was new to Sodor. Since then, he's grown up and is now in charge of his own branch now. This feels like Edward and Thomas for a new generation. What makes the dynamic even stronger is how it's connected to the themes. Philip was chattering at night and Edward wanted to find somewhere to sleep. Some of the locations he found are rather silly, but it emphasizes how desperate he is. And when Edward has nearly had an accident, Philip realizes he messed up. However, I do have one thing. Why not pick Rosie for this episode? I mean, okay, Edward and Philip have a good dynamic here, but why not Rosie? And he just suddenly leaves at the end of the episode. I mean, why? You have your family here for God's sake. And also, we'd never see him and Philip interact again after this episode.
The Big Freeze.
This one was rather disappointing, even for a writer like Helen Farrell. The plot description said that Diesel proved himself to be a hero, but all he did was mock the steam engines and in the end, deliver the coal they needed. That's it. And how does the railway survive with diesel trenches that can go at 30 miles per hour? That's an issue which has been plaguing the show since season 6. There's no diesel muscle. In fact, it felt like a missed opportunity to bring Boko back into the fold by putting the Express. There were a few good things, like Thomas being punished for his ignorance, as well as showcase the negative side of Winter. And that's pretty much it, I'm afraid. Oh, and the Fat Controller tripping up 3 times felt more cringeworthy than funny. Can we at least add variety to his comedy? I don't hate the episode, but it felt rather meh. It could have been a 4.5 minute long, and the plot would be the same.
Emily in the middle.
This episode is practically Love Me Tender 2.0, only with Emily slapped on and without the heart and charm of the season 20 episode. Think about it, both a Donald and Douglas episode written by Davey Moore. They take place in winter and at least half the plot is spent on them arguing. Oh, and Toby is there because why not? In Love Me Tender it made sense for them to pick up because they disagreed about which lines they should play first. Here, they just argue because the story demands it, and that each infuriated the other by telling Emily about the past incidents. Well, here's the thing. We have already a set of twins like that, Bill and Ben. Donald and Douglas are supposed to be more mature than that. Hell, the reason the latter came to Sodor was because the former did not want to be separated from his brother. That, and there was the threat of him being scrapped. Not only that, there can be more done with them if given the chance, and not just in winter episodes. They don't always need to work together, for goodness sake. See Donald stuck and escape as to why that's the case. And what about Emily? To be honest, she's the best thing about the episode. It's a nice idea to try and put up with two arguing engines at their worst. Had it been James or Gordon, they would have snapped much sooner. I don't blame Emily for getting frustrated at the twins' petty bickering. There was sometimes they needed to learn after Love Me Tender that arguing would only land them in trouble. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. It's probably my least favorite episode featuring Emily as the lead character in the Brenner era. Well, if you count season 21 as the Brenner era. If I wanted to see this plot, I would rather be watching Love Me Tender, as it gives more credence to Donald and Douglas's conflict. Emily in the middle just feels like another sign of creative stagnation.
Terence breaks the ice.
Now we are talking. This is the episode very much every Thomas fan was looking forward to ever since it was announced. Terence made his debut in a winter episode, so it's appropriate he returns in a winter episode. I quite like the flashback. Yeah, it's a bit lengthy, but it's possible there wasn't enough story to fill up the runtime. That being said, it's a great way to reintroduce Terence to a modern audience who may not know who he is. Though it is rather odd that Thomas would say he always wore a snowplow after said episode, when we have seen episode where he doesn't, and where he doesn't like to. Some people have criticized that Terence doesn't have much of a character, to which I can understand. Yeah, they gave him a bit of a cocky personality like he had in Toby Takes the Road, and it works really well for the moral and the story. Plus the rescue is really dramatic, as he could have sunk like the big tree. Speaking of which, I really like how the Earl worked around the problem he faced by stacking another small tree on top of some presents. That's really creative, you know. And it's something I think all of us can do when faced with a problem.
Daisy's Perfect Christmas.
If there was any episode that was a metaphor for the Thomas fandom, it would be this one. Daisy feels like the perfect representation of entitled fans who would rather the show focus on them rather than children. You know, the actual target audience. They even use children to further hammer in the metaphor, and it works brilliantly. Oh, and did I mention that I love the moral here? Breaking tradition can be a good thing. Plus, any episode where the troublesome trucks become carolers is worth watching.
We wish you a Merry Christmas! We wish you a Merry Christmas! We wish you a Merry Christmas! And a Happy New Year!
I'll never not love this episode. This is how you do fame and misfortune. Well done, Mr. Moore.
Confused coaches.
Here we go with the season 21 finale. Is it a grand finale? Well, not really. It wasn't really a bad episode either. It's serviceable to say the least. For one, it takes a while for the main conflict to build up. Gordon and Spencer's rivalry is fun to watch, though it feels a bit strange the former would boast about Platform 1 being the most important. Then again, it did boast about it in respect for Gordon, so I can understand. That being said, it does lead to some funny bantering over numbers. Spencer got burned for not having one.
Well, you don't even have a number!
number 68.
What wasn't funny was the fat controller tripping up while offering the drinks. It's getting old, writers, and it's gotten to a point where you wonder how the hell is that guy the controller of the Northwestern. Finally, they show him being authoritative when he scolds Gordon and Spencer for their petty rivalry. That is something we need more of. Another thing that I really liked was the code swap. It definitely feels like a plot device taken from the Railway series. And I can totally buy Thomas and Philip not seeing who's at the platform, but the passengers and station staff are a bit questionable. Wouldn't they or the Fat Controller notice that something was off? Although it does lead to an interesting race around the third act, and it makes me wish for an episode where Spencer takes the express whilst Gordon is absent. That would be great to see. Oh, and it's the first time Thomas has had a New Year's themed story. It's so refreshing after the umpteen Christmas stories per season. And as for Thomas working with Philip, I really don't care. Anyone saying the box cab has replaced Percy just because of this episode are really shallow. Overall, this isn't really Helen Farrell's strongest episode, but I don't have much of a reason to hate it either. It's fun to watch it if you're in the right mood, but there are stronger episodes in this season alone I would watch more often. Well, this was a tough one to get done. I finally got it done, and how does it hold up? Surprisingly well, actually. Even more so considering that 8 episodes have to be cut due to the Boba thing. Season 21 is meant to establish Rose's new role and job, but so far we have not been able to see it. And we don't know why she is at Vickerstown in Journey Beyond Sodor and afterwards. The biggest issue I have with this is its continuity with Journey Beyond Sodor. Again, the latter is meant to take place after it, but the biggest plot holes are in regards to Carly's presence at the docks, and not to mention Thomas going to the mainland with Edward to pick her up, and Edward living at Tidmouth instead of Wellsworth. Heck, James didn't even make a comment about Rosie's paint in the special. I even asked people when Journey Beyond takes place in relation to season 21, and the results I got were inconclusive. Unless Team Thomas makes a comprehensive timeline of the series, I'm afraid it's an unanswerable question for now. Even more frustrating is how the timeline of season 21 itself is. Carly didn't appear in Emily in the Middle, Harvey was confident in a more singular engine but wasn't in second gear, Edward was at Tidmouth in the Big Freeze, well, unless it was visiting, and Rosie appeared in red in Hasty Hannah prior to the fastest red engine on Sodor. Daisy's perfect Christmas didn't have snow. The list goes on and on. This season wasn't bad at all though. I love that they are making female characters more prominent and the themes for the show, even if some weren't the most original, have never been stronger than they have been here. And again, I don't mind the experiments being implemented. It's not the first time a season has tried new things, and it won't be the last either. So really, what's the fuss all about? To sum up, season 21 is fairly good. There were a few episodes I don't like that much, but the good outweighs the bad by a lot. And I pretty much like the season a lot. If Boba didn't came out, this would be a surprisingly good finale for the show. You know, we see Gordon and Spencer resolving their quarrels, we see James have his accident after such a long time with his brake problems, and we also see Big Mickey getting a face. You know, it's pretty much a happy the end story, if we be frank. Oh, and Diesel also got his resolution. So, now I'm going to be ranking all the episodes from least favorite to most favorite. And the final overall rating for this season, 8 out of 10. This was, in my opinion, the last good season. Season 21 was the last season of the Brenner era and it really stood out. So yeah, thank you. Bye.